I remember my first day on campus. First day. I was sitting with another young lady who was from South Africa, so she was black. That's not, you can't really take that for granted, but she was black South African. And we were sitting on the patio outside the refectory. And first day. And the other white student, who I had never met before, never spoke before, comes up to us, and her first words to me ever were, "I hope y'all aren't causing no trouble." Really? Like, I don't even know your name yet. You don't know my name. We clearly ain't friends where we can have that sort of conversation. But that's where it began. And so thanks be to God, we had this thing called small groups. Y'all got small groups, right? Have y'all gotten your small group assignments yet? Is it that? Y'all been to your small groups already yet? No? Okay. But you'll go to small groups, and I had small group, and I had small group in Dr. Ye's house. And I told Dr. Ye earlier that this is where the story began. And the interesting thing, brothers and sisters, we'll talk a lot about this in case I'm going to have you jump in. You know, I always got to invite him to jump in.
That's right.
You know, but
I'm trying to learn to be silent.
That's a hard thing for a white man. But we would have these conversations at small group where I was able to be vulnerable and express the things that were going on. The irony is, in small group, the only person who ever reached out to me beyond small group was this brother here. And I remember occasions, and this is why I blasted my music on campus, because it was hard to come to campus. Thankfully, I tell people thankfully, they did not have family housing when I went here, because I was able to live off campus. And by the grace of God, I had a lease that did not expire before I came to seminary, so I didn't even live in Virginia. I was so glad to live in Maryland. I would leave campus and I would be like, oh, thank God. But I came, and every day that I came, I had to pound some Bob Marley or pound some Burning Spear. Those are reggae groups, if you know. Or pound some Public Enemy or some Dead Prez or something to get my mind right to come to campus. And I remember the day when we bonded very, very deeply. I had made it to the Welcome Center and parked. I couldn't get out of the car. I sat in the car and cried. And Case saw me and came in the car and cried with me. And then we've been brothers ever since. For a moment, please.
Thank you. That was an incredibly powerful morning. It is through grace and through the movement of the Holy Spirit and through some incredible opportunities at VTS for me that I was even open and aware, right? Because so much of what we have and so much of what we had and built on came from me believing what he said. Right? That was it. But just believe what he was telling me. And when I entered even briefly at invitation into that space, weeping seemed the most natural, most obvious, most real, and most of the time the only response that we could have, that I could have in that context. That was Midler year, and if Jabril had come first year, right, he might be giving this talk, but I would not be here, right, because I did all of the things that every book you read will tell you not to do, right? So I sat down at the table with all the black students, and I was progressive. We're going to talk about the movement of God. I was taking my consortium class at the Howard School of Divinity, right? I had the one white experience ever of stop and frisk at Howard University, right? Because they needed to see my ID. Well, like everybody else was walking in, but they had to check me. And I came right back to the refectory. I was energetic. I was ready. So earnest. And I sat down at that table and I said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but this is essentially the content. Could you explain to me how I can appropriate the black church history and culture for my own benefit. How does this work for me? And there was no violence that day, physical, which is a grace because I deserved to be slapped at the least at that point. And I was told to shut my mouth and go away and stop by the Bishop Payne Divinity School library, right, and read something if I was that interested. Right? And so through that reading and through God working on me, I had all of that work. Again, remember how low this bar is, so that a year later, I could believe the words that Jabril said to me. And that started it. Just listening, not just listening.
Amen.
And